After winning the war in 1935, the communists took steps to consolidate their power in the country. They carried out the re-education policy, which was truly an act of revenge to suppress their former enemy rather than to help them integrate into new society, as the policy supposedly claimed. Hundreds of thousands of former South Vietnamese civil servants, military service members, intellectuals, religious leaders, and wealthy people were cheated and rounded up into the forced labor camp for a long time. Tens of thousands died of brief execution, torture, starvation, various kinds of illness, and inhuman conditions. The families were persecuted and cut off all means of life. Today, 50 years after the wounds inflicted by the communist crime had not healed among their victims, and the Vietnamese communists had not acknowledged and confessed the crime they committed during those horrific years, nor disclosed the information concerning the number of people who died in the camp. While calling for reconciliation, they still sowed the seed of hatred against the former regime by rewriting contemporary history according to their biased perspective. As one of the victims who endured almost 10 years in labor camp, I will present this paper the information I could get and tell the truth about what happened. I also expect the world not to forget the crime, and we'll work together to prevent it from happening again. About 7 months after the fall of Saigon, the communist government began to build hundreds of labor camps throughout the country where it misrepresented and lured hundreds of thousands of people who had worked with the former regime of the Republic of Vietnam, including military officers, civil servants, religious leaders, intellectuals, merchants, non-communist party members, and even some communists it deemed distrustful. Hanoi officially claimed the re-education camp to educate the people about the new government policy through labor and political education. In reality, the camps were forced labor to imprison their former enemy for a long time when they could not kill more than 1 million people en masse. From May to July, the Marshall Administration Committee, acting as South Vietnam Provisional Government, organized 3-day re-education sessions for low-ranking military members and civil servants. Next, they summoned the officers from company grade to senior grade and general officers for 15 days to 1 month session, depending on their rank. In April 1975, the communists threw the last dragnet, misrepresenting discharged and retired soldiers into attending a 7-day learning session. The pamphlets read, "Retired and discharged officer of the Puppet Army from captain to lieutenant colonel, officer of the Puppet Army from lieutenant to colonel, whose summons order had been previously postponed, must report to Don Bosco School at 12 Truong Binh Street, Go Bop District, at exactly 7 a.m. August 20th, 1975, for a 7-day education session. Bring your paper, pen, clothing, blanket, mosquito net, personal item, and food, money for use in 7 days." The soldiers hoped that they could reconcile with the new government and would soon be released to continue their normal life in peaceful environment. They were naive to believe the communists would keep their word. All the victims ended up in minimum of 3 years to decades in the concentration camps. However, except for very few people who had a close relationship with the high-ranking Communist Party member, all others were kept in the camp for a minimum of 3 years up to 20 years or 30 years. The usual statement we heard from the cadres was, "You will be converted into new men through political indoctrination, labor, and obey the camp rule. When you show your progress, you will be released to go home with your family and build a new happy life." In mid-1976, the Republic of South Vietnam Provisionary Government issued a 12-point policy that decided that the term for re-education was 3 years. In 1979, the cadre in the concentration camp explained that 3 years was not a prison term, but a milestone for prisoners to strive. Those who did not show progress would be kept for more terms. It was estimated more than 1 million people in South Vietnam underwent short-term detention, and approximately 200,000 people were detained for at least a year. In 1988, the Communist Deputy Minister of Information confirmed that there were about 100,000 former soldiers and civil servants of the South Vietnam government imprisoned in re-education camps. The re-education courses, which were claimed to be just for several weeks, turned into years of hard labor. Although South Vietnam surrendered and the country was reunified, the Communist government considered the Southerners as enemies who could not readily accept the new regime. Furthermore, 20-plus years of war had instilled in them a deep hatred toward the South Vietnamese soldiers, and they were still afraid that hundreds of thousands of armed soldiers would form an opposing political force, causing a clear and imminent danger to their regime. Without trial, the Communists charged the soldiers with betraying the fatherland and being dangerous to the domestic security. Explaining the reason for not bringing the soldier to court at trial, they claimed that the education policy was more human than prosecuting at criminal court. The re-education policy was a convenient way for the communists to eliminate or at least disable or isolate the former enemy from the people, as well as to retaliate against people affiliated with the old regime or to presumably suppress future opponents. Communists were worried that the elite officers and politicians still influenced people in the South. There were numerous camps built throughout Vietnam, while some had been converted from the abandoned military bases of the South Vietnam Army. Others were built in remote jungle or the deep valley surrounded by mountain ranges. I spent 9 years and 9 months in various concentration camps. The last 4 years I was in Xuân Phước A-20 camp, with held prisoners who had been classified as very unrelenting and dangerous. After reporting to the local authorities, I was sent to 5 different camps before finally settling at A-20 camp in 1979. This was one of the most brutal camps in southern Vietnam that held dangerous criminals who had received long-term to life sentences or the death penalty waiting for execution. A-20 was located in the valley of Kỳ Lô, district of Dong Xuân, Phu Yên province. The Venerable Thi Thien Minh, in his book Memoir of my 26 years in prison, called it a valley of death. In its history, no prisoner could escape without being caught or killed. The area had been a cradle of the communist resistance in the Viet Cong fought interzone during the two Indochina wars that only the Republic of Korea Army soldiers were tenacious enough to subdue, thanks to the harsh military tactic. On the first day we came, the camp commander warned, "You will rot here." A-20 consists of 5 sub-camps labeled A, B, C, D, and E. Sub-camp A and E were built close to the camp administration facility, while B and C and D were located about 5 kilometers apart. Around the camp, there were dozens of small thatched roof houses of the peasants who were absolutely loyal to the communist government. At A-20, there were 4 rows of brick houses, isolated by barbed wire. 4 or 5 groups of 30 men were settled in one house. Each individual had a narrow space about 18 inches wide to sleep on. The only door of each house was locked after meal delivered at about 6 p.m. From 6 to 9 p.m., prisoners sat in groups of 30 to review their work during the day. Then came to the criticize and self-criticize session to confess their own mistake or accuse other inmates of fault. Camp conditions were extremely inhuman. We were provided with very little food. For each meal, we had a few slices of cassava root, dotted with some rice and salty water. The cassava we ate was the toxic A-34 type used to produce polyethylene sheet. Once in a while, prisoners were fed aged vegetables, mostly water spinach, slightly white. People could find residue of human feces which was used to fertilize the vegetable. 3 times a year, to celebrate the holiday, we were given small pieces of meat the size of a thumb. A former Arvin Artillery Battalion commander who lost his teeth when in prison stated, "We didn't have anything to eat. We only got rice 1 day a month. For the remaining days, they fed us with white radishes, potato, and corn." At a camp in Hà Nam province, for 2 years in a row, there were about 15 people died each week from starvation and disease until prisoners were allowed to receive food and medicine supply from family. During years in the education camp, we ate whatever creature we managed to catch, such as snake, lizard, and even worm and insect. Sanitation and medical care were very poor. There were no medication other than some oriental medicine derived from unknown leaves or root. Without anesthesia or pain relief medicine, we removed the decayed tooth with a pair of pliers and tweezers. A prisoner who broke his limb while working would be treated at the prisoner medical station by an inmate doctor, instead of being sent to a hospital. In the communist society, people of different classes receive different levels of treatment. At Dong Giang Re-education Camp, Can Hoa Province, about 100 prisoners died of lack of food or untreated illness. At Xuân Phước, we worked 8 hours a day on the field under the scorching sunshine or torrential rain. In the beginning, we had to clear the bushes and cut down the trees to convert the jungle into cultivable land. The camp set the daily quota that each prisoner must dig a minimum of 20 holes to plant a cassava tree. The quarter increased day by day until it reached 50 holes per day. Prisoners who did not meet the quarter would not be allowed to bathe in the pond after a day of working hard, and would receive a reduced ration for the whole month. At all the camps, prisoners were forced to clear vast areas that previously were minefields. Many people lost their lives or had their limb amputated. Prisoners at all the camps were forced to dig 10-meter long canal every day or cut a cubic meter of wood a day. We have to do manual work using our hand and rudimentary tools made from any possible material we could find. Prisoner death rate was very high, thanks to starvation, disease, hard work, and harsh punishment. Some academic study by American researchers gave a total of 165,000 people who died in concentration camps. First and foremost, prisoners had to declare a detailed life history of themselves and 3 generations of their families, including everything from birth until April 1975. This process was repeated every year. Communist graduates would read and compare to find out some important detail the prisoner had covered up. In the first year of detention, prisoners underwent re-education sessions lasting 3 months each. Each season consists of from 8 to 10 lessons to brainwash the prisoner from the counter-revolutionary perception. For each sub-session, after 8 hours of lecture, prisoners sat in groups of 10 for the next 3 to 5 days to discuss in front of communist cadres. At the end of sub-session, prisoners were ordered to write a short essay to prove that they thoroughly understood the lesson. After the first session, prisoners had a whole week to write a comprehensive paper in which they praised and thanked the party and government for their merciful policy that allowed them to live and gave them opportunity for education. Also, they had to confess the crime against the country and the people they had committed. Everybody had to acknowledge his crime one way or another. Many prisoners have to make up some crime to put down on paper to avoid being accused of being stubborn. The cadre insisted that the more crime a prisoner confessed, the more he proved his sincerity and the sooner he would be released. The most critical part was to admit they would deserve the death penalty and to beg the party to spare their life. The second session was to prepare prisoners for extended stay in the camp. Communists forced the prisoners to write letters to convince their family to move to the so-called new economic zone. This was a new attempt to clean up townspeople from urban areas, giving room to new migrants from North Vietnam. It was an irony when hundreds of South Vietnamese elite, many of them college graduates, were lectured by the communist educators who had the education level of the middle school or lower. Indoctrination sessions continued each year but were less stern than in the first years. Although the predicted bloodbath did not happen, indiscriminate killing was carried out in camps. Prisoners were shot dead at the scene if they attempt to escape. At camp in Mekong Delta or in regions that previously were communist secret zones, they would mercilessly beat and kill prisoners for no reason at all. The camp punished prisoners who expressed their mistrust towards the communism and those who violated the camp rule or did not work hard enough by locking them in confinement cells for months. The prisoner was not allowed to have anything except for a pair of pajamas, no shoes, no socks, no mat, no cover sheet. He then sat on a cement platform with 2 feet leaning on the iron rod. The orderly would lock both his legs at the ankle with tight shackles. The prisoner had only one position, half sitting and half lying on the concrete. He was given a meal consisting of approximately 2 spoons of rice and a bowl of very salty water for the whole day. The punishment could last 1-2 months or longer until the prisoner became a walking skeleton. At Camp Suoi Mau K5 in 1977, because of a minor rule violation, I was forced into a small army container with 2 other fellow prisoners. The container was sealed and put in the open air when the temperature reached 110 degrees. 3 times at Camp Xuân Phước, I was locked in the confinement cell with both my feet shackled to the wall during winter time when the temperature dropped to freezing point. The fact that prisoners were beaten to death was not rare, particularly in the Mekong Delta region. In October 1979, Ba Minh, the Vườn Đao camp commander, used a bath towel to choke to death a former AVAN officer after he had lost a debate with the prisoner on political issues. In 1977, the Vietnamese Communist government began to release a small number of low-ranking officers who had some relationship with the communists. In 1978, they released more prisoners who were medical doctors, dentists, and pharmacists so they could serve in their medical facilities. In early 1980s, more waves of prisoners were released on the occasion of Lunar New Year Liberation Day or National Day. Many prisoners were required to relocate with their family to the new economic zone in remote area or work in collective form. After going back to their hometown, prisoners were put under house arrest for at least 1 year. Every week they had to report to the local police their daily activity, people whom they met and talked with. They could not go out of the town without a permit. The security officer would closely monitor every single move of their family. Many families were broken during the time prisoners were in the camp. Some could not come back to their home because their wife had a new husband. The most painful experience was when the wife married a communist. Unable to find suitable jobs, most prisoners worked as simple labor, such as handyman, porter, mason, or a pedicab driver. We soon realized that our children were not allowed to attend college or university. The communists applied a 3-generation discrimination policy for former soldiers and civil servants of the Saigon regime, which was at the bottom of the classification of the society. Physically or mentally, a man's endurance has a limit. Over that point, he might break or surrender. He could do anything to get out of the circumstances. Many of us overcame the fear and endured the torture to keep our faith and to be loyal to our ideology. We knew communists were never satisfied with whatever the prisoner confessed. They kept suspecting that there was something hidden, and they would never stop abusing until the prisoner turned into a corpse. In concentration camp, food became the potent weapon the communists used to control the prisoner. Hunger could transform a man into a devil or an informant. Everybody was haunted by food. It was the only thing we talked about day and night. even in our dream. We would rather receive a bad rating and reduce ration than surrender to the hardship. Today, decade after our ordeal, we still have a nightmare. In our dream, we were stuck in a re-education camp surrounded by hundreds of inmates while we acknowledged that we had a house in the United States and we could not come back. The more we struggled, the more we bogged down in misery. In another dream, we were haunted by the stench of dead human flesh as we were lying among the decaying dead fellow prisoner. By studying the U.S. history, we can see the difference between the West and the East, capitalism and communism. On November 6, 1865, the Civil War came to an end in a peaceful and orderly manner. After surrendering to the Union, General Lee was treated with respect. His men in the Confederate Army were allowed to go back home. General Grant issued a parole to Confederates to return home. He ordered his officers to let the ex-soldiers of the South keep their horses and agreed to supply them with 25,000 ration. Confederate soldiers were allowed to free transportation on government train and boat. The general appointed 3 officers from each side to ensure the proper execution of the term of surrender. During World War II, the U.S. took 175,000 German prisoners and transported them to New York and Virginia. They were treated fairly, given plenty of food and shelter and relatively comfortable conditions. 1 year after the war ended, they were repatriated in 1946. Some ended up 2 more years in labor camp in France or England. Only the top leader and those who got involved in the Holocaust were brought to the Nuremberg court to pay for their crime. The above case are a great lesson of how people from opposing fronts would be treated when the dispute ends in civilized society. By the end of 2004, recalling the war that ended 30 years before, the Communist Prime Minister Mr. Wolfgang Kier said, "There are events that brought joy to millions of people and also sadness to millions of others." He might be one of the very rare communists with some degree of empathy toward the war-losing side. Vietnamese people, particularly the Southerners, have been waiting for the communists to express their remorse for the heinous crime they have committed. Only then a real unification will exist and both sides would put the past aside to sit down and build a bright future for Vietnam.